Hello, hello! Welcome back to Loki's Librarian. If you are new here, welcome. I am your librarian, Katrina, and this is where I am reading through the enormous library of books that you see behind me, and then I give you a quick synopsis and tell you what I think about them. So if you like books, just aren't sure what to read next, hit that subscribe button, like and share my videos, and let me know what you think in the comments. My hair is doing something very odd today. I don't know why. Well, I do know why. It's because it's grimy and gross. I've been weeding my front yard, so I have dirt in my hair, but whatever. This month I needed a little lighter reading, something to make me laugh and make me think and make me have all the feels. So I took a leap into a happier book this week with About My Mother, True Stories of a Horse-Crazy Daughter and Her Baseball-Obsessed Mother by Peggy Rowe. The accompanying cocktail is called the Horse Feather. It's basically a Moscow Mule but with bourbon, so it is 2 ounces of bourbon, 4 ounces of ginger beer, 1 ounce of lime juice cordial, and 2 to 3 dashes of Angostura Bitters. So let's do this. About My Mother is a memoir. It's, I believe, the first published book of Peggy Rowe, whose book Vacuuming in the Nude I read almost 2 years ago. And then I saved her other 2 books for when I needed a serotonin pick-me-up, and this was kind of a good pick for that. 2 ounces of bourbon. Okay. And it is a memoir. I mean, truly, it's telling the story of a mother and a daughter who seem to have absolutely nothing in common, but find common ground through love of each other. And, you don't have to have everything in common with your parents. I mean, you get the happy stories where people are, oh, I am my mother's daughter, I'm exactly like her, and the people who are like, well, I'm nothing like my mother, but I still love her because, hey, she's my mother, and she did the very best she could raising me. And then there's those of us who are in between who have something in common with both of their parents. Oh, yeah, I should have probably gone with a bigger mixer, but this will work. And it's completely relatable because who hasn't been embarrassed by their mother at some point or another, or grown up to discover that they have become their mother in some capacity or another. Ooh. Well, I bought another bottle, but I don't need it, but only barely don't need it. Yoicks. Ooh. I'm doing this fast because this is not a very long review, so let me stir this up so I can pour it and go through the rest of the review. This is just Peggy Rowe's story of what it was like to grow up with her mother, who loved baseball, specifically the Baltimore Orioles, did not understand that Peggy was not a proper young lady that her mother Thelma hoped for. The proper young lady was Peggy's older sister Janet. Peggy was more of a tomboy back in the day. And in true oldest child fashion, Janet was everything a mother could want. Good table manners, enjoyed playing piano, popular at school, a good student, liked boys, but not indecently so. And Peggy was not. She was a tomboy, which used to be an okay thing to be. It's a little more nebulous these days, but I was a tomboy, so I completely related to Peggy on this one. I mean, I like Moscow Mules, so this was not really that big of a stretch to think that I would enjoy this one. I mean, Peggy was almost a juvenile, like she flirted with juvenile delinquency. Okay, she didn't actually flirt with it. She kind of was a juvenile delinquent. She just never got caught. Sometimes just by the skin of her teeth, but she would do like the ding-dong ditch at the neighbors' houses or toss small stones on their roofs to knock over their garbage cans. She never got caught. Interested in boys before she got to college, and she disliked her music lessons. She was an average student and was maybe a bit braver than the average girl. And this was kind of impressive because, I mean, like one of the stories has to do with a particularly awful teacher that she had in grade school. I mean, teachers today are basically whipping boys for the students, and I've heard some completely awful stories from friends who are teachers about parents who believe their little darlings can do no wrong and scream at the teachers when their kids get a failing grade. And believe me, this is all a very new phenomenon. When Peggy had a particularly awful teacher who would make misbehaving students stand in garbage can or fold themselves under her desk, Peggy was just kind of tried to keep a low profile, and one day the teacher turned her evil eye on Peggy, and Peggy ran away rather than be humiliated like that. She was about halfway home when she realized that if she actually went home, she'd have to explain to her mother what she was doing home, which was not really an option at a time when parents usually sided with teachers. And I like to think that Thelma probably would have been horrified to learn that the teacher was so humiliating her students, but we'll never know because Peggy returned to school and faced down her teacher in the principal's office. And no one had to stand in the garbage can again after that. So that kind of gives you an idea of the backbone that Peggy was born with, because it's when you're like 8, 9 years old, standing up to authority like that is not an easy task to do, but she did it. And you can admire that. And the one tomboy thing she did not get was baseball, which was, of course, her mother's obsession. And the one very girly thing that she loved, although it seems her mother did not realize just how girly horses is horse. She loved horses. And I think I read somewhere that most of the extras in The Lord of the Rings are women because they couldn't find enough men who were experienced riders, because girls love horses. And so, like, they had to, fill in that background somehow, so they hired a bunch of women because that's all they could find that could actually ride the damn horses. Peggy, well, her maiden name is Noble, so while the Nobles lived semi-rural, the family did not have room for horses. Like, the happiest day of Peggy's life occurred when their new neighbors joined them at church and she found out the neighbors had horses. And that eventually didn't work out through no fault of Peggy's. The neighbor ended up being a drunk. Salut. And she did almost end up being a true delinquent. But here's the thing. Peggy grew up in a time when parents didn't just plant their kids in front of a screen and let TV or the internet raise their children. They actually paid attention to the children, talked to their children, engaged with them. So one day after the first horse contact fell through, she did a very, very girly thing and went out shopping with a friend. And Thelma was thrilled because, oh my God, Peggy's taking interest in clothes. Peggy bought a combination of like a fishnet tube top shirt. This would be in like the 1950s, late 1950s, but still, she even admits she probably looked a bit like a prostitute. Thelma didn't see her in it, but her father did when she came back home. And he didn't say anything, but apparently his eyes about popped out of his head, and within a week he'd found a new horse connection for Peggy, because if your option is having your daughter become a 13-year-old streetwalker in Massachusetts or finding her horses, he went with the safer option there. It's kind of, at least it's not drugs. She'll never have money for drugs if she's into horses. So he found her a new horse connection. And not too long after that, the family bought a house with enough land that Peggy could have a horse. And Thelma briefly took riding lessons with Peggy as teacher. This book was charming, and she's got such a way with words. It was charming, it was heartwarming, it made me laugh, it made me cry, it made me think, because that's what a good author does. It pulls you into their world and gives you a little glimpse of what life was like for them, at least in a memoir sense. That can happen obviously with fiction books too, but she's such a delightful author. She's just so much fun to read. I immensely enjoyed this book. I read it literally in one day, so not that I took that time to get ahead on next week's reading, but I read it in a day, and I highly recommend it. It's very enjoyable. And that's it for this week. So if you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next Sunday with Harry Truman.